Hello all, good afternoon, and thank you for staying so long and so late. I really appreciate it. I'm Marianthi, and I'm an associate professor and head of civil engineering at UE Bristol. And I'm here to present the specific topic, which is quite simple, really. In construction, SMEs. Does it actually matter how you organize people around digital tools? Or can you just bring the tools and expect productivity to happen? And this is essentially the question that my colleagues and I are trying to answer through this research, which is funded by ESRC, actually. Very briefly, the overview today, I will cover the challenge, the framework, different types of hypotheses we have in place, and then I will focus a bit more on the findings and the discussion. And I will try to be on time, and even sooner actually, so we can be on time for the event after. The challenge. I'm not sure if you are aware of the UK sector, particularly the UK construction sector. We know that there are a number of challenges that the sector is actually facing the last couple of decades, essentially. And what we are not discussing sufficiently is why these digital tools, why we believe these tools, the digital tools will fix it. And can they actually do that? We obviously have the whole gap with the different elements within the skills agenda, the aging workforce, and so on. But an interesting problem that we are trying to examine in this case is what happens when you have an SME that is actually investing in technology. They buy the platform or whatever is in place, they hire, in this case, through crowdsourcing, and then what is happening? In a lot of cases, nothing actually happens. And we see that problem actually across many different sectors. It's not only construction and infrastructure. Manufacturing has similar problems, defense has similar problems, and so on. So, is there something missing? Are we missing a layer between the technology and the productivity? And what does it look like? We are grounding that in two different traditions, if you like. On the first hand, we have the resource-based view, and on the other hand, we have the knowledge governance. Just very briefly, from the resource-based view, this is a firm's advantage where it is not what it has, it is how it organizes what it actually has. And from the knowledge governance, this is the knowledge from outside that needs internal infrastructure to actually operate and to be absorbed. This actually led us to develop what we call the HR digital fit framework. It has 5 different areas included, 5 components, which essentially is trying to examine, has this firm matched the right people with the right skills to the right tools and the right tasks, essentially. And based on that, we have 3 different hypotheses developed. The first one is about crowdsourcing and whether there's a connection between crowdsourcing and productivity. The second is about the digital fit and whether there is a positive correlation between digital fit and productivity. And finally, the last part, the positive relationship between digital fit and labor productivity, and whether crowdsourcing is actually a mediator. And this is what we examined through our data collection. We had a quite extensive survey. We had around 300 or 400 responses across sectors in engineering, this is why I mentioned manufacturing earlier. Out of these responses, approximately 95 were focused on construction SMEs. All of the respondents were CEO and decision makers, which was important because these are the people who are actually paying for the automation to be implemented, deployed, bought, installed, and so on. And 82% of the respondents, of course, were based in England, the UK context I highlighted earlier. And we used bootstrapping when it comes to how we analyze the data due to the limited sample when it comes to purely construction. And now the key findings very, very briefly. We have 4 findings. The most important one, the headline, is that crowdsourcing directly increases productivity. And it is rather meaningful as an outcome for this research. Secondly, the digital fit also supports productivity, but it works as an infrastructure, it's the enabler, not a direct driver. And then the mediation layer. Crowdsourcing, we say, is actually a mediator between digital fit and productivity. So our hypotheses are correct. And we also realize that the benefits are the same across different sizes of firms and locations. There were no moderation effects along this way. What does that mean practically? What we argue essentially is that crowdsourcing can help as a market-based knowledge governance mechanism. It is not a hiring tool. It is a system that actually helps SMEs, and it helps them in terms of governance. How do they employ and deploy external expertise? How does that enter the firm through price signals, open competition, and so on? And for SMEs and micro SMEs, this is a lifesaver. This is between being able to deliver to the very few clients they have and going project to project or not. And we know how tough construction is. And especially in the UK, a lot of firms were closing quite quickly the last few years. So that is actually a lifeline for these companies. Another thing is that this digital fit can help as with an absorptive capacity, if you like, which sets up the internal conditions that helps understand whether the external expertise that is coming to the company can actually fit and actually stick for a longer term. And we are developing another part of research right now having to do with AI for manufacturing for a different conference. But there is a lot of similarities in terms of grounding in embodied knowledge. And essentially, the argument is that productivity in craft industries doesn't come from replacing the humans with any sort of digital capability, but it comes from orchestrating them together. And with this paper, in this presentation in particular, we get the empirical evidence for that thesis, that the digital infrastructure alone doesn't produce the gain. It's when we actually team up the people with the digital type of infrastructure. I suppose a term you might be hearing lately from a lot of publications is human AI teaming, for instance, that becomes very trendy these days. But in our case, we talk about orchestration and not automation. We are aware, obviously, that our sample is relatively small and there is more work to be done from that perspective. Nevertheless, there are a number of implications for practitioners, policymakers, and so on. For SME leaders in particular, it sounds obvious, but it's not necessarily obvious from an industry perspective. First, you invest on the people, and then you invest on the technology. I talked lately to a lot of manufacturers for a different project. They don't do that. First, they buy whatever they want, and then they hope there is a fit with the people, and they hope for the best. Literally, they cross their fingers and they say, okay, let's try that, which is counterintuitive, I would imagine. But, well, we had to find it as a research finding. From a policymaker's perspective, it is more about setting up the readiness that makes the adoption productive. And from a researcher's point of view, we are focusing now on designing frameworks that actually pair the digital tools with craft expertise, not instead of it, or despite of it, or on top of humans. And there's future research having to do with collecting more longitudinal type of data. Does mediation hold over time? We also intend to develop comparisons of crowdsourcing against in-house support for different levels of tasks and projects, and further developing the orchestration framework, the bridge with other sectors, as I mentioned earlier. And just to summarize very quickly, and it's just 5:30, I'm very proud of that. I'm going to finish quickly. I hope it wasn't too quick. Productivity in construction SMEs quite often depends on orchestrating the human expertise with the digital capacity and capability. So In our case, what we proved is crowdsourcing is the governance mechanism, and the digital fit is the enabling infrastructure. So the next step is to develop a framework to bring everything together. And I'm very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and thanks for picking up on time as well. There is time for, let's say, a question or two quick questions. Yeah.
Hello.